Alright, day 2, part 2, and success. All 4 of the exhaust manifold studs came out in one piece. You can see I started the new one up just to make sure the threads were all kosher, good to go. This is the kit that I was recommended by my local CarQuest. It is, unfortunately, a Dorman product, but for 11 bucks I ain't complaining. 03135 is the part number. And it's just an exhaust flange hardware kit. Comes with 4 studs, 4 nuts. The other nuts actually land there. And then my fix for this whole issue is I want to be using my wire brush, clean everything as well as I can, and then use the Ultra Copper Permatex gasket maker. Now it says it goes up to intermittent 700 degrees Fahrenheit intermittent. I don't know what they consider intermittent, whether it's 5 minutes, 5 hours, you know. Most of the time this truck sits, anyway, I usually don't drive it about an hour, hour and a half at a time. So I would consider that intermittent. There's the rules for it, you know, what it says to be done. Basically, this is what I'm using for a gasket for something that's not supposed to have a gasket, so it doesn't do this again. Let me get up on this ramp here, and yeah, you can see right there and right there where the exhaust was actually blowing out the manifold there instead of going down the pipe and out the back. You can actually see my new starter there that put back on last summer. Yeah, that's it. For whatever reason, I had 0 issues. I mean, it did take a little bit of elbow grease to get those out, but they backed right out. Maybe I'm just lucky. Maybe I know exactly what I'm doing. I don't know. Not complaining. But, yeah, that's, like I said, part 2. I'm going to walk you through what I'm doing now. So, up to this date, we've got all 4 of the studs and nuts off. We're ready to start cleaning the fitment and stuff. Alright, now after, you know, I just showed you got all this apart, what we need to do is to go ahead and clean up as best as possible the surface where everything mates, everything goes together. It's surprisingly very clean looking. Let me get this hose out of the way so we can focus. And voila. Yeah, right here you can see where I started and I had to go back and open up my sealant a little bit better. But what I'm going to do is run a bead around this on each one after you get them clean. That's what I'm doing. And then I'll put my exhaust studs in, and then use the flange here to kind of walk it up on there. Now the sealant says on the back to wait 1 hour for it to set up a little bit. And there we go. Yeah, let dry 1 hour, then tighten to torque specifications. Allow 24 hours to cure fully before filling with fluids or returning to service. So basically, I don't have to be to work till, say, 4:30 in the morning, so I'll get up around 3. And it's about 3 o'clock right now. So, yeah, that's about half of that cure time. If it shouldn't take that long for it to. 24 hours is just a standard thing. I've found that it's a fix-all, it's a cure-all. It's, you know, 24. If it's still wet after 24 hours, then you have a serious problem. But yeah, that's the gist of what I'm doing today. You know, I took my wire brush. By the way, that thing's older than I am. It's my dad's actually. And he's too cheap to buy a new one, so he just cut it off. But anyways, I took it and used it as well as I could in the confines of what I've got, and cleaned up the mating surfaces as good as possible. I mean, you got to remember this stuff is almost 30 years old. It's not going to be perfect without machining it, and that's going to require taking everything off, and at that point I would just buy new. I mean, personal thing going on there. If you're going to take it off, put new on. If I want to put new on, why not go ahead and add headers? And for anybody screams, I know that the headers do not really give you any performance gains over the EFI style manifolds for inline 6s. it's just one of those things. Might as well, if you're going to be paying for new manifolds, why not go ahead and get new headers? I mean, that's just a thought. The collectors will be a bit bigger. The runners will be a little bit longer, give you some more torque. There is performance there, but it's not as much of a jump as it would be if you had the old log style that was 6-into-1 on the old carb setups. That's just a cheap upgrade for you inline 6 guys out there. If you got your carved inline 6, put you a nice Offenhauser or any other aftermarket intake manifold on, put a carb of your choice in, throw a steel set of timing gears in it and a nice camshaft, pop in some EFI manifolds, and boom, you got cheap headers. I mean, $20 at the junkyard versus $200. That was the last time I checked on them, that I knew that I could get them. I think now they're on back order and you're going to be like $500, no matter what brand you go with. So EFI for the win, because it's there, it's cheap, and worst case scenario, you can get new ones. I have not, however, deleted the EGR return off of it. I mean, it's all still up there, so I said, screw it, forget it, I ain't worried about it. Just a heads up to give you some more room. In my case, I pulled the whatever I do it, there it is, the vacuum canister, excuse me. Pulled the vacuum canister off. It needs to be replaced anyway, it's kind of crunchy. And this ground that goes from the engine over to the cab right here, you can see where it goes up right there. I had to remove that, and then I kind of flexed this out of the way, so I got a pretty good amount of room there. Thank God for inline 6s. But back to, I'm rambling as I usually do, but yeah. Once you get your studs out and you're ready to rock and roll, clean the surfaces as good as possible. It doesn't have to be a mirror finish, just as good as you possibly can, meaning at least one lap over everything just to knock the worst of it off. And then go back, and I'll show you a video section here in just a second of how I'm doing it. Again, I'm not a professional mechanic. I mean, I went to school for it, but it was one of those just to get some paperwork, just so I could try to get a job. But enough about that, back to the good stuff. Alright, now, after we've already, again, got the studs out, got it all cleaned up as best as we possibly can, I went ahead and got my exhaust sealant put around. It's caked on just a tad thicker than what I wanted, but, hey, it is what it is. I don't want to do this again. So, from there, just put the studs in, tighten it up, and good to go. Alright guys, we've been through a lot together. This is the final stretch. Now we're putting studs in. Now we've already cleaned everything, got the studs out, the old ones out, cleaned everything, put gasket maker in. Now we're putting studs in. Now since these are dry and I've already test fitted them, and they seem to be just fine. These are the ones supplied by Dorman. They're studs. I mean, I can't really comment on quality, grade, or anything like that. This seems to have a mark that says H on it, so I'm assuming hardened is what it stands for, which would be great in this case. And again, this nut is part of the stud. It's not actually a nut, it's part of the stud, but this is 14 millimeter, and the nuts that they come with are 16 millimeter, just so you know. Now, since I don't want to have oil caked in here, which, while yes, it in theory would make it easier to remove these again, I just want to dip these in a little bit of regular old oil from the engine. It's just what I had left over from oil change. This is just the drops that don't come out. So basically my whole method for this madness is stick it in, swirl it around, one good flick, get all the excess off, because all we need is just a thin little covering of it. There we go. Yeah, it should be. There we go. Yeah, I had a little dust on my lens I had to cover up. I'm not even going to edit that out. Hell with it. This is awesome. Again, you can see it's just a little bit. It's not much. Whatever little bit that's left on this once it goes in, will dry up once the engine runs for 5 minutes. And it's not really enough to actually catch anything on fire or whatnot. So from there, again, we're just tightening the studs up. And then once those are on, we will be walking the exhaust up onto the flanges and then tightening those down finger tight for an hour. And I'll come back out and just tighten the daylights out of them. And that's about it. All right, guys, we're making a little more progress. Studs are on. All four are tightened down as tight as they'll possibly go. And I have on the front manifold 2 nuts hanging on. You can see them there. Now, those are finger tight at the moment, because it turns out that the nuts supplied with the Dorman kit that I am using are not 16 millimeter like the OEM ones were. These are what appear to be 11/16. As far as that goes, let's see here. We have a 17 millimeter that it just will not fit into, and an 18. 18 will work, but it's pretty loose. But we can go over to, say, the 11/16, and it's loose, but it's not insanely loose. And you go to the 5/8 and just nothing. So it appears that's what it is, 11/16 for the head of these nuts. All right, it is successfully done. Well, I wouldn't say successful until in the morning, but all 4 studs and nuts are on. You can see it's squished just a tad out of the crack there between where the manifold and the pipe flange met, but point is, it's all done. It was about an hour since I'd first put it on, so I went ahead and tightened it on up. It's just as tight as I could get it reasonably without, breaking anything off. And yeah, now I just got to hook my vacuum lines and stuff back to the canister and put my ground strap back over to the engine, and this thing should be ready to fire up in the morning. But yeah, I just wanted to go over that, and just a couple things I noticed from the new kit, which is the Dorman, again, it's Dorman 03135. I should be able to get this in the help section at Advance or CarQuest or AutoZone, wherever. The 7/16 by 14 studs and nuts, those are the actual diameters of the stud itself and the hole of the nuts. Now I'm out of breath. I've been doing this so much. The nut that you see there that you tighten into the exhaust manifold, that is still a 14 millimeter with the new kit. Just something to take in note of. The overall stud length is roughly a ½ inch longer than the factory one, so you might want to have either an extremely deep well socket or some wrenches on hand, either way. And one more thing is the nuts. They are not 16 millimeter anymore. They are now 11/16 of an inch. As you saw earlier, I had to finagle around and find which size it actually was, because it does not state the actual size of the nut. It just states, what size the stud is. It doesn't say the actual head size for the nuts. So yeah, again, overall studs are longer with the Dorman setup than the factory. The nut down here is 14 millimeter. This one is 11/16 of an inch. So yeah, it's kind of wonky. It's got metric and standard in the same thing, but whatever, it seems to work. So yeah, that's about it. I had to kind of walk it on up each way and do a little finagling, but I finally got it where I think it should be and shouldn't leak. So we'll go from there. We'll see you in the morning. Thanks for watching.